Hello, gathered friends, I'm Nuva, and welcome to BIONICLE Deep Dive, where we analyze the tropes, characters, and lore of LEGO BIONICLE. In this video, I wanted to explore a small but interesting headcanon, that Turaga Nuju may have taught the people of Le-Koro how to communicate with the birds. Let's dive right into it. So, in Le-Koro on Motunui, we see that the Le-Matoran have successfully tamed the Gukko birds, living harmoniously with them and being able to call them at will. The Gukko not only let the Matoran ride them, but fly them into battle as the Gukko force. The birds followed very precise commands from their Matoran riders. Kongu in particular is noted as one of the best bird tamers on the island, seeming to have gotten it down to a science. In Minog, Tuku is shown being able to call a bird to him with a specific flute song, and in Mask of Light, Liwa called a Gukko to him with a whistle. This paints a picture for us in the early years that Gukko birds are relatively easy and reliable to tame. However, once we flash back to Mesternui, we have this expectation subverted. It is made explicitly clear, and is even used as a recurring gag, that before the Le-Matoran came to the island of Motunui, they could not ride Gukko birds. In fact, it said that Matau actually tried and failed multiple times to do so, and came to the conclusion that they could never be tamed. All of this changed in the Hordika arc with Rahaga Kulis, who studied and learned the language of the flying Rahi that he protected. Kulis even commented that Gukko was a ridiculous name for the species. It wasn't what they called themselves, and as far as anyone knew, it could be an insult in their language. He didn't know. But while trying to escape the Vizrak, he called to them in their language, and they swooped down to help him and Nuju, with this being the first instance in known history that Gukko birds had been ridden. And it's made clear that the reason they could do this is because of Kulis' ability to speak their language and communicate their need for help. Forcing Gukko birds to be tamed wouldn't work, but talking and communicating to them would. This idea is also reinforced in Maze of Shadows, where Nokamar convinces a giant mutated bug to let her ride it by talking to it via her mask of translation, with Matau openly wondering if her methods would work on Gukko birds. After the Hordika arc, Nuju decided to learn the language of the flyers himself to honor his mentor, eventually opting to speak exclusively in this language as a Turaga. Motoro became his translator and the only person on the island who could fully understand him. The other Turaga, particularly Vakama, have been shown to be able to grasp his general meaning from time to time, but they still needed Motoro present at meetings to translate his words in more detail. So, the clear dividing line in the history of Gukko tameability is Nuju's first ride, where Kulis called to them in their language, which Nuju then learned himself. And in the present day, the birds are shown to be called with whistles, an important part of the flyer language. Nuju is the only one of the Toametru to fully master the flyer language, hence why Motoro is needed at even private Turaga councils. This then begs the question: did Nuju teach the Le-Matoran the language of the flyers so they could tame Gukko birds? It's hilarious to think about Nuju teaching the Le-Matoran because it's such a clash of personalities. Nuju being quiet, solemn, and can't put up with nonsense, meanwhile the Le-Matoran as a whole are chatty, party-going, and all about that nonsense. It almost feels out of character for Nuju to do this, especially knowing that it means one of the rowdiest populations on the island would now be able to understand him. But to be fair, Nuju is known for being more generous than his cold demeanor suggests, so it's possible that he gave them at least some of the basics of at least giving them commands so they could call the Gukko to them. And, I mean, there's not really anyone else they could have learned from, right? Well, actually there is. Motoro. It's possible that Motoro on his own, or on the direction of Nuju, may have taught the Le-Matoran the basics. And this is actually my personal favorite interpretation of this for a number of reasons. First, it makes a little bit more sense character-wise. Motoro already had a history of making connections with the other Matoran tribes through a shared love of Rahi, such as back on Mesternui when he worked with Onu Matoran archivists when he was running his pet shop. The next reason is that it allows for a potential deepened relationship dynamic between him and Kongu. Kongu and Motoro's dynamic wasn't a particularly fleshed out one among the Toa-Nika, but there were a few notable instances that suggest Kongu really cared for Motoro. Kongu was very pointedly distraught by Matoro's death to the point where he warned new chronicler Kopeek to only write nice things about Matoro. Again, in canon, there wasn't much interaction between them, but perhaps this headcanon can give their dynamic some interesting depth. Perhaps Matoro personally taught Kongu how to communicate with birds, which is why Kongu got so good at it. Since they were both their Turaga's right hands, they would likely already work together on any coordinated efforts between their villages. And I really like to imagine them having this connection, which really fleshes out the interpersonal history between the Inika. Now, I suppose it's also possible that Mattel picked up on some of it from Nuju and passed it on to his people. Kongu once claimed that Matau was a great Kiwa riding champion in his lifetime, or youth in Treespeak. So there is evidence that he became a great bird tamer on the island. But I must admit, Kongu talking about Matau's life dawn does raise some questions. Kongu never knew Matau's youth. Matau was never young on the island. The only reason I'm saying this is to justify a headcanon, which I find hilarious, which is that Matau never actually learned how to fly birds. He just lied and said that he did. We never actually see him pilot a bird. The only reference to him doing so is from a time before any of the current Matoran could remember. Then again, Matau is canonically known for pulling pranks on Nuju, so him knowing a little bird speak could absolutely lend to some interesting pranks. But however they learn to call their birds, the fact is the Le-Matoran clearly know at least a little bit of the language of the flyers, meaning that out of all the villages on the island, it is the Le-Matoran that are the closest to actually being able to understand Nuju. And that is just so hilarious because he would hate that. One day he'd be visiting the air village on official Turaga business and make some sarcastic remark under his breath in bird speak, assuming no one would catch it, and then to his utter shock and horror, some villager would laugh. He'd never set foot in Lake Oro again. He'd avoid it like the plague. And also, I think the fact that Matoro could fluently understand birds was a completely missed opportunity in the Voyanui arc. Just imagine a scene where they're trying to get more information on the Paraka or wherever, and he just casually mentions that he overheard some lava hawks talking about them moving across the island or something. That, combined with Kongu being an expert bird tamer, the two of them could have really had some cool moments using their knowledge of avian wildlife to their advantage. But those are my thoughts on the origin of how the Le-Matoran learned to tame birds. What do you guys think? Do you like these headcanons, or do you have your own thoughts? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care, my gathered friends.